everybody, I'm back today with this fun Valentine's card. What we're going to look at for the most part today is the background. So using stencils to emboss, using a gel press, making shaker elements, just some fun stuff that can spice up the background of your card. I don't know if you remember, but my arm is hurt, and so coloring is a little difficult. So it's really was kind of a result of me trying to find something that's easier on my arm, and I think I've come up with some really fun ways to do this. So I'm going to get into those. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done that yet. And if you have a gel press you want to pull out, get that out, and we're going to get started with a gel press. I only have a 6x6, so we're going to start with this. I do like to take both of the plastic pieces off and stick it to my Misty. I could probably stick this to my mat, but the Misty just gives me a very good spot that I know doesn't have a whole lot of lint and stuff like that on it, and it sticks really well to that. Never used a gel press. These are very forgiving. You can do all kinds of different ink combinations on them. I really like to be able to match my coloring and my card and have everything coordinate. So you'll see right here when I take off this plastic piece, I did see a little piece of fuzz, and so I'm trying to get that off my mat because it will make an impression. But you can use your Distress Oxides, you can use a little bit of white acrylic paint, you can mix those things together. What I decided to try this time, and it's a little bit of a mess, but it makes a really cool print, is my Distress Oxide re-inker. Now this comes out pretty quickly, and I may have done a little much on here, but it's nice to get some coverage with this. So I'm going to just add some of the spun sugar Distress Oxide because I'm going to match my entire card to this color. And then I'm going to use this little distress brayer. This brayer is new for me, and even with my hurt arm, it's very easy to roll back and forth. So I'm just coating the area with some different ink right here. I see that there's a little bit of puddling, and I know that I'm not going to want quite that much color, so I go ahead and take a print and get some of that absorbed. It still is amazing how much it still leaves on the mat. That really makes your ink go a long way. So that in itself is a pretty cool print, but I'm going to go ahead and spread it out and just get some of that excess up, which I can use this later for backgrounds and such, but I'm going to get some of my excess up, and then I'm going to show you the print that I just love. I decided I would even use my brayer on the piece of paper, and that gives some interesting marks too. So one thing you have to be okay with the gel press is just playing with it. You know, you're going to get some prints that you might hate, but there may be parts of that print that you'll cut out and use. It's just a really great way to kind of stretch yourself. Especially if you're like me, I'm definitely more type A, and I want my cards to look amazing. So a lot of times I don't go outside the box as much as I should, and when I get my gel press out, I am definitely moving outside the box. So this is a really fun way to stretch yourself. This print will be lighter because I've cleaned up those puddles, but there's still stuff on your gel press. You want to keep making prints until it is all gone because it will make a lot of different prints, and you can see that beautiful pink there. If you want something darker or you missed a spot, you can always tap it down back onto the gel press. Like I said, there's a lot of paint on the gel press, so it really gives you some options to add more detail to it if you're interested in doing that. Next, we're going to emboss this area, and we're going to do that with the Lawn Fawn hearts background. When you are embossing with stencils, you do have to have a special sandwich, so we're going to look at what that is for the Spellbinders Platinum 6. Video about this with our Gemini Junior, so you can always catch that in the pop-up. So you're taking your large platform, then your stencil, then your piece of paper, and you can add a shim if you really want it. I'm putting a shim down just to make sure that I get a really deep impression. And then you put this tan embossing thing and then this, what they call their embossing plate, on and run it through the machine. I'm going to show you what that looks like when you're done. So when you're taking the top one off, once again, that tan floppy kind of mat. Then this is my shim, which actually gets a little bit of embossing on it, and I think looks amazing. That would be really cool to put on something. So love that one. And then let me show you how deep the embossing is on the first plate. Sometimes this is hard for me to get off. pushes it down so far that you have to really work at it. So here's what that looks like and how deep the embossing is just from a stencil. It's pretty amazing. Remember, we're cutting a heart out of the front so we can make a shaker window. You see how that gel press looks? Looks awesome with that embossing. I'm going to move on though to what's going to be the background of our shaker. And I'm going to show you ways that, to me, I love having things coordinate perfectly. So for my background, I'm going to kind of look at where the heart is, go ahead and ink blend some of that sponge sugar into the background. Even though I'm putting shaker mix there, it really just gives it a great effect to have kind of a faded color that matches the front. So I'm going to kind of ombre this up a little bit with a darker towards the bottom and then kind of fade it up towards the front. I will keep bringing in that heart to show myself where and make sure I've got everything covered where that card is going to lay. And then I'm going to take the sides of this and I'm going to make some dark sponge sugar lines on the edges that make it look like we've got cardstock behind it that is perfectly matched. So I've cut this piece of paper on the background. It is the usual A2 size, but what I'll do is I'll go to my front piece and I'll trim it up just a little bit so we'll be able to see our edges. Using my front piece to make sure I've got the whole heart area covered, and I'm going to check that again. Let's see, looks like it is everywhere. I may smooth something out, but that looks excellent. So now I'm going to move on to adding a little darker at the bottom just so that it really looks to me like it's fading up. So that's one thing, you know, if you think you've kind of gotten your colors all the same and you're wanting to have that fade effect, just go back and add more. So wonderful thing about Distress Oxides is that you can just layer and get great effects. I felt like that gave it a little bit more of an ombre look. So now I'm going to do the sides of this cardstock because I want to make it look like there's a cardstock that's sponge sugar peeking out behind my other panel. So I just took my ink pad and made myself a border. I did even it out a little bit just so it wasn't quite as streaky with my brush, but this gives you a really good amount of coverage. And I didn't really measure this. I just knew that it was going to stick out a certain amount, and so I just kind of freehanded it because most of this will be underneath the other card. So just as long as you've gotten it thick enough that you're not seeing any white from behind, it really does give you that look that you've got that matching cardstock behind your front panel. The final of that, I just love it. And I'm going to be careful. I'm going to let it dry so that it doesn't get fingerprints on it. And then let's start working on our front panel. We'll make that shaker window. So we're going to need to attach some acetate to the window while this is drying. And we'll start making all of those parts and see how this goes. So the other element to our background is doing something like a shaker. I love shaker windows because they just give so much interest and it's so fun, not just for kids, but for adults alike. We love to see things that are sparkly and shake, and you can move it around on the card. So shaker windows are a great way to do this. I have cut out a piece of acetate that fits on this, and I just freehand this. You could try to use a die or something else, but most of the time I just cut until I get the right size, and I'm going to stick this down with double-sided adhesive because if you use glue, you got the chance that that glue can kind of leak out and get onto your window. To different brands of double-sided adhesive. This thin one that I have here, I believe, is a Fawn brand. They are all, you know, slightly different but work great. And for this, we just really need a great adhesive that is not going to leak out onto our window. So I'm just going around and making sure I've sealed all these areas. It doesn't matter as much on the sealing of this front part. I just don't like my worrying about my window coming apart. So I want to make sure I've got the front panel stuck down. Once I get all of this done, you're going to have to take your adhesive off. It's always nice to use some kind of sharp tool. Occasionally I'll accidentally pull up the adhesive when I do that, so it never hurts to press all of your adhesive down before you start trying to pull the tabs off. But I'm going to pull all these tabs off and we're going to add the acetate sheet directly on top of it. have that pre-cut acetate sheet, and I'm always looking at it to make sure there's not fingerprints or little pieces of fuzz on it, so you can see me kind of messing with it. You could use a microfiber cloth for this too. Sometimes I'll wet one and really wipe it down, but just stick it carefully on here. Make sure you've pressed everything down, and then you've got your front window. Now we need to make the back part of this window so that we will be able to hold our shaker pieces. So you're going to need some foam tape. You can use all different types. I'm going to use the strips from scrapbook.com. These strips are really helpful when you're bending around something like a heart, something that's not square, so that you can kind of bend your foam tape. And you know, I do cut it at times and don't always bend it, but it really does make it faster. And so each foam tape has a different height. You want to take the biggest piece of your shaker mix and put it next to this, and just make sure there's enough millimeters in that height to let everything shake around. Many a time I have put one layer and forgot to check my shaker mix, and then tried to go ahead and seal this over the shaker pieces, and the shaker pieces won't move because there's one that's too big. So with this card, I ended up checking my shaker mix and realizing that I needed 2 layers of this foam tape, which definitely takes more time and effort, but the results and the pieces of that shaker that are so cool really look good. So I just go with 1 level of tape, take off the adhesive, and I add the 2nd level of tape. So with a shaker card, you want to make sure whatever your window is that's holding the shaker does not have any open spaces where a little piece can stick through. So I tend to line up all of my pieces here are just to help the rest of the card stick up. But if you're going to do 2 rounds around your heart, your window, then you're going to have to do 2 rounds on everything, which makes this a little bit of a pain, but it looks really great in the end. A couple of quick tips. Putting shaker windows together, I think that it is much easier to put your shaker mix or whatever you're going to put inside the window on what's going to be your background. And the reason that is because you've got this window over here, you've got all these sticky parts that you're trying to stick down. And even if you've already powdered the inside of that heart, which I did off camera, sorry, I put some powder around that edge so there were no sticky edges for all these little pieces to stick to, you still have a lot of stickiness that you can accidentally get shaker pieces stuck to. So I know that's a lot, that's kind of like a tongue twister, but I think that it's a lot easier to have your shaker pieces on the background and then hold your other piece over it and center it up. So here's how I do it. I've got one little piece stuck to my window there, so I'm going to make sure that that goes. That's the one that was the biggest, and I was measuring to make sure everything would fit. And then if you need to move the background around, you can. I also like to check my window and just make sure I don't have stuff stuck to it, like that little piece of fuzz there. And then I can line it up and stick it down. Once you've stuck it down, there is no going back, at least not with most foam tapes. They immediately stick, and pulling them off would mean ripping your paper up. Oh my goodness, I just love this mix, and I picked this based on the colors of this card. I just thought it looked so great with them. Plus it had the little hearts in there, and we're making a Valentine's card. So really now all that's left to do is to put a couple little characters and our sentiment on, and we're gonna have our amazing card. I'm going to speed up the video while I do this, but I'm going to add this little skunk and this bow tie, bouquet of flowers, and little heart candy. All of this is from Fawn. It's their latest release, and it's called Scent with Love and the Scent with Love add-on. So I've colored everything to match my card, and I'm going to put this guy on here, add a sentiment, and then our card will be done. Of course, I will link all of these products in the description, so if you're interested in any of them or you just wanted to know what I used, it will be down in the description of the video. So check that out. If you go through those links, like if you click through a link, it does not cost you anything, but it does give me a small commission that helps me run this channel. So if you would do that, if you're going shopping today, I would appreciate it so much. So we got this little guy here. We're going to put him right below, right at the bottom of the heart, and then I'm going to add a sentiment. So I'm going to show you what I used as my sentiment, and then we'll be done with this video. I decided just to use the Happy Valentine's Day sentiment, which is part of the add-on stamp set, I believe, which is really helpful just to have for all kinds of cards. But it fits barely, but it does fit on this wavy banner. I had to curve it a little bit. And this wavy banner, I thought about putting underneath his feet, but I felt like it just looked really good centered on the heart. So here's some up-close pictures so you can see that background a little bit better. I love the gel press with this embossed image. I hope you learned something from this video and had a great time with me. I had a great time being here with you. Make sure you check out the rest of my videos. Have a great day. Bye.